Hi, welcome to another episode of the Modern Biopharma Podcast. I'm excited today to do a little bit more in the Pharma 4.0 world. This is an area that I don't know much about, but I'm excited to learn about. And I know a lot of people that listen to are anxious to learn as well. And today on our podcast, we have Vijay Yadav. I'm sure I said it wrong again, dang it. He is the Director of Quantitative Sciences and the head of Data Science at the Center for Mathematical Sciences at Merck. How are you doing today, Vijay?
I'm doing great, Jesse. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for being on today. I'm excited about today's podcast for a couple different reasons. You know, when I do these, I really get to learn a lot about something that I don't do day to day. This is not something that I even touch in my day-to-day work in pharma. So I'm very excited about that. And also it's a little bit bleeding edge of our world right now. And I hear a lot about it. I go to events and I see a lot of people talking about artificial intelligence. It's a buzzword, machine learning, it's a buzzword, but I don't actually see it. I don't see it being done. And when I first was introduced to Vijay, I found out not only are you doing it, but you've actually been doing it quite a few times, relatively speaking, in our world. So that's awesome. So you have some real experience. It's not made up. You're not selling it. You're doing it. So I'm excited to have you on here today. So if you could, as we get started, could you just tell us a little about who you are, your background, and what you do?
Thank you, Jesse. Yes, indeed. Vijay Yadav, myself, by training, I am a computer scientist. My background is artificial intelligence and machine learning. I did that specialization a long time ago, but I had an opportunity to come back and really apply it in the field. Primarily in pharmaceutical industry, I was able to apply AI and ML, manufacturing, commercial space, also, operations in different business functions within pharmaceutical company. And we have been able to do in the recent, years, we have been able to do some great work, and I'm happy to share on this podcast today.
Excellent. So, I think one of the things that was neat is I got to read, a couple of your articles that you've written for a couple different websites or industry like periodical type things. And so I got to already see a little bit about what you do. But two of the words that we've used already and are talked about a lot is AI, so artificial intelligence, and ML, machine learning. Everybody's heard of AI. Like normal people have heard of AI. ML might trip people up. If you could you just give us a quick, just so we're on the same footing again, what's the difference between AI and ML?
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. That's a really great question, and sometimes there's not enough clarity. So let me take an analogy that will make sense. So let's understand how, as a human, we work. So what we're trying to do is artificially, we're trying to emulate a human being. And that's where when we say artificial, what we're trying to do is we are trying to emulate the human beings. Now, how do we basically function as a human being? So think about as we grew up, as when a child, right? So we learn things, right? As a human learning. And how do we learn it? Somebody tells us that here's what the facts are, and you take those and you put in your brain. Next time somebody asks you what that thing is, you basically you recall that and you bring it back and say this is what it is, right? Mm-hmm. Over a period of time, as a human being, we grew up, we collect a lot of learnings. But imagine if there's a situation where you have not seen something before, and you don't know what the answer is, right? So you're going to be wrong, right? But once you know what it is, then that learning goes in you, right? So there's a component of learning. So same thing you can apply machine learning. So it is a way how we human learns. We're trying to make the similar learning for a machine as well, right? Okay. So just the learning part itself. Now think about a machine. Can we make as a human? Think about the human, how we take the input in ourselves. So we got senses, right? Ears, eyes, and hands and everything else. We're touching and feeling it. We're taking input from all the different directions, right? and then we are processing it and making certain decisions at some point of time, right? Now we can take a decision very, in a very based on real time what is happening. The challenge with the machines is you have to tell the machine what to do. Now you know that there is a instruction that you give to machine is exactly going to follow what you tell them. But we are the human, even I don't tell you to do certain things, when the situation arises, you are capable of making the decision without somebody telling you. So what we're trying to do is artificially, we are trying to replicate a human being in a machine, which is very difficult element of that. Machines are made to be given the instruction. But if we can make machine capable of thinking on their own, similar to what human being is, that's what artificial intelligence is.
Okay.
So now in the whole process, yeah, go ahead.
So for machine learning, the machine comes to a crossroad and it goes, okay, it gets a new piece of data and it goes, okay, next time I come to this crossroad, I'm going to always go right. So that's a machine learning. Artificial intelligence would come to that same thing, and independent of the right data, it would actually be able to make a decision based on potentially other factors.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Because if it doesn't have, like, machine learning has to have all the data points filled in for it to make a decision. Right. Artificial intelligence goes, this is my best guess. Let's go.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay. That's exactly what it is. So you can imagine machine learning is a part of the artificial intelligence, because what you're doing machine learning is you're applying the learnings to make certain decisions. So if you take the bigger circle, that is artificial intelligence, machine learning is one part of that, where you're recognizing the pattern based on the previous learning that has happened. So it's a small subset of artificial intelligence in that way.
Okay, excellent. So, all right, we're going to go down this path, but before we do, I wanted to just ask you a quick question. So I don't know if it was yesterday or a couple of days ago, there was actually an announcement with Merck that they're going to partner with a company in regards to doing something called a digital twin. Again, this is another buzzword that's in the industry. It's in other industries. It's been around for a while. In the pharma, I'm in my very low understanding of this world. It's a very new concept, pragmatically speaking. So what is a digital twin? And if you could, I don't know if it fits, but like when we talk AI ML, does it fit into those worlds, or is it part of that world, or is it a completely different thing? Could you just talk to that really quick?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a really good advancement in the industry. They are related. We can apply AI ML for that as well. What the digital twin is, you can imagine you have a physical bioreactor, right? That's where things are taking place. You are manufacturing something. So imagine, can we take the digital or replica of physical machine in a logical structure, which is basically your digital space, everything. So all the components within the physical bioreactors are exactly within the digital itself. And they're talking to each other and they're replicating the data. So the data is coming basically exact what is happening behind the scene. All the data in the physical machine is showing up in the digital twin copy of that. Now, what is happening in that process, I should be able to see all the data behind it real time. Advantage of digital twin is I should be able to kind of turn the knob on the digital twin to do something on the physical side of it, because that they're connected together. How powerful is that? So if I'm controlling a bioreactor sitting in my office, I should be able to do that fairly quickly. Now imagine, since digital twin has capturing all the data, I can feed the data to my AI ML model, which is running real time. So now I'm able to get insights as we're capturing the data. I can basically take the insights real time coming and feeding to AI model, giving the insights, what is happening inside this digital twin, and actually the actual machine itself, so that you can go and correct the knob.
So how much different is that than just, looking at, the data that's on a SCADA? If you have a PFD or a PID that shows the pump here and the pressure here and the temperature here and, dissolved oxygen there, like, okay, it's not a digital twin, I don't think, at that point, because it's only certain things are being measured, viewed, whatever. But how big of a jump is it from measuring different little things within a process to being a digital twin of that same process? How big of a jump is that?
It's a big jump. It's not easy. So think about, almost you have to apply the concept, what we call object concept. So you are basically creating a digital object of that. An object, when I say that, it's object that has its own property. So think about a pump, for example, right? Imagine whatever the settings of that pump is. You are literally copying that, all the same settings in your digital copy of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a big jump to do that. But I think technology is maturing. This is the time that has come, and so much advancement has happened in the last 5 to 10 years. I think one day, I think things might become much easier, but it's a big jump actually to creating a digital twin.
Okay.
To have one.
I think this is a really interesting conversation and idea that I'm hoping to have a podcast on it at some point in the not too distant future. But it reminds me of I say this probably too much. It reminds me of Star Trek type stuff where they're like, what would happen if we did this? And then somebody types it in, and then they're like, oh, then it would blow up. And they're like, let's try it this way instead. Oh, nope, it didn't blow up this time. All right, we're getting closer. And to me, that's like it's like a TV version of what a digital twin is doing, I think.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That I think you brought a really good analogy. 100%. That's exactly what is happening. So think to do that.
It's that ability to model. It's that ability to model all the variables at the same time, instead of, like, again, normally we go, okay, if we turn down the pressure here, right, what happens? And then we watch what happens, right?
Yep.
Versus in a digital twin, we get to, without any actual thing happening, we get to change the pressure and go, this is what will happen.
That's right.
When we do the pressure change in real life, right?
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly what it is made for.
All right, cool. All right, well, we'll move on from that, but I do think that's super interesting, and I can definitely see how that fits into the AI ML world. So, all right, so what I wanted to do is, if we could, you've documented some work that you've done on a project that you guys had there at Merck, and it was this thing called automated vision inspection. And it was a use case for you guys to use artificial intelligence and machine learning in your own processes to make things run better, right? And have less failures and all that kind of stuff. So if you could you just give a brief overview of what it is? I know there's a whole paper on this and you can't go through the whole paper, but just talk about sort of why you did it and what was the point.
Yeah, no. So let me talk about the business driver around, right? So Merck, we have some of the products that we cannot produce enough to meet the business demand, right? So what are the way to address that business challenge? One way, we set up a new plant, right? And we all know that, setting up the new plant takes time. You have to go through the whole process to do that. It might take time. The other avenue is that, okay, so let's understand what is our yield on the production floor, right? Is there any way we can improve that production itself, capacity-wise, do that, right? So one of the area that we find that, as we know that every product must be inspected either by human eyes or by machines, right? Of course, human eyes are not possible because we are manufacturing at such a large scale. So the machines that are basically looking at these products and determining whether something is defective or not, and that process is basically a GMP process, right? To do that. Now, you cannot program your machine to be 100% accurate in the sense that, of course, we want a good product to be completely clean, but it is rejecting certain defects. Now, what is happening is a programmed to reject the defective product, but at the same time, it is ejecting some of the good products as well. So there's a yield loss, the good product getting rejected. And so that is one avenue that we can really see is there anything we can do, understand what is happening as to why these machines are ejecting these good products as defective. Let's understand that and fix the upstream process, follow the GMP process, the fine tune your machine. So you can reduce your loss on the good product side. Now that is a very challenging part, right? So we basically applied to solve that problem we set the target, and as you can see, the business case is very clear. You have already applied all the raw material, the time and money. It is matter of what method can we come bring in and capture those losses that was happening as part of the GMP process, can improve upon it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you bring AI or any other techniques, you are winning big time, because you're saving, everything is out there. It just matter how you capture through the process.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I joined Merck. That was my first experiment that I had a proof of concept basically run, and we were able to prove that these AI models can detect the defect to a very high degree of success. And we said, okay, let's use this tool. In the first phase, what we're doing is we're using a business tool. So we still not deploy the model at the end point where it is determining something that is going to the market. We are not there yet.
Yep.
But as a business tool, when the batch runs, all the ejected images from the batch is fed to the model. And model tells that, hey, this is what exactly happened. This many of this type of defect we got. And by the way, here are some of the good products that machine rejected. Understand that it gives you very good insights. It can give you the breakdown, which camera rejected the most, this one. Now you can see a problem is the camera is the problem or something is coming with the defect itself to do that. So you can go to the very granular level, the machine wise, the camera level, which camera rejected it, for what region it rejected, right? And then take that insights and go back and fix up upstream process or fine tune your machine to reduce the yield. Okay. So you can see the business case is very much clear right there.
So I just want to just so we're all talking the same thing. When we're talking about this, we have product, basically going down an inspection line essentially, and you have cameras, sensors that are saying that have criteria that say this is a good product, this is a bad product, right?
That's right.
And they split it off. Bad product goes one way, good product keeps going, good to go. And what you are doing is you're going, hey, here's all the bad products, right? And you're instituting a system to understand why were they bad, right? And are they actually bad, right?
Yep.
And if they're not bad, but they were being shown as bad, this process is able to, or by working with all this data efficiently, you're able to identify areas that you can go back to your original GMP process, which is sorting, and go, hey, if we tweak this here and tweak this here, we're going to get a better yield because we're not going to be incorrectly throwing things in the trash. Am I understanding this correct?
100%. That's exactly right.
And to this end, at this point, you're working from a business perspective. You're not changing the GMP process with artificial intelligence or machine learning as it goes, right? You're using it more almost like a diagnostic tool.
That's right.
That you can go back and adjust after the fact. But ultimately, it's not taking a bunch of people picking it up and looking at it and whatever, right? So it's automating that process rather than becoming another giant cost for the company at the same time.
That's exactly right.
So what I don't know the answer to this, so I'm not asking a leading question. How do you put that into a GMP? Is that even possible to put into the GMP process itself? Is there a way ultimately to turn the original process into a learning process so that it's always getting better and better, independent of human involvement? Or is that an evolution of FDA regulations that is just ways out there still?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and we're thinking on that, and we have that true north in our mind. What we're trying to do is that, as you know, that all artificial intelligence, machine learning is how much data you can feed it to, how much data you can give it to learn, right? Mm-hmm. So while we're doing this process, we're learning a lot, right? For all different kinds of defects, all different kind of product. Some products are, lyophilized products, some are liquid, some are syringes. And you have to develop the model for each different types of, product that we have in the line. Yeah. And we're learning a lot. And we are trying to learn from this. At some point in time, these models are so mature that they're pretty close to almost 100%, though it is not possible. But someday they would be pretty close to that area as much as we can basically make them learn to do that. So that is our target. We're working towards that while we drive the value from this insight. At some point of time, we hope that the model is mature, that we can replace these machines with actually the model itself. Now, outside production process, we are experimenting, right? To see if I deploy this model on the actual machine, how will that function? So we are already experimenting outside the GMP process and learn from it. So answer to your question is yes, that's where we want to go next, but I think we're still far away from that. Maybe
so I'm just going to ask, and you can just ignore me. What does far away mean? Like, do you see this happening in 5 years or 10 years?
I would say five. I would say 5 years.
Okay. I mean, that's not that far away in our world, really, right?
Yeah.
So
I would say, and we have partnered with some other pharma companies because they're having the same challenge as us. So we have partnered with them, and we're sharing our knowledge, how they're, solving the problem, learn from each other, and become a voice, even, for whatever the guidance that we learned from that, how should we doing, so we can basically go and influence, regulatory bodies that here is what is basically possible and how have we done it. So there's a partnership happening across the pharma company in this space.
So I have a question, and for anybody listening, I have a list of questions to ask, and I keep going to different ones. So keeping him on his toes here. So when I think of something that's really pushing the boundaries from a technology perspective and things like that, in the pharma world, I never think of, if you will, big pharma. I never think of the big boys, right? And you're as big as it gets. Merck is as big as it gets. And yet this is bleeding edge technology in our world. So what do you think? Is it just a culture thing? Is it, a couple people that are just real strong leaders and are getting behind this? So what's different about Merck that's really making you guys drive this kind of technology development internally?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I think one of the element is that is really the team, right? A very strong team. So one thing, when you take the initiative, something like this, I think you have to have the senior management support. What we're able to sell to them is that when I ran the proof of concept, and I basically went and made the case that, look, with this small, idea, here is what we think we can basically do that. And we had from their proof of concept to proof of value, we went that, and we were able to prove at a larger scale. What it became was the company was willing to invest in this. So this has a big investment in this, bringing people from inside, even some of the outside, and basically make a team to basically strive that. So I think management recognized that this is the area we, if we are not doing it, then we'll be left behind. But at most, I would say the most important thing was the business value itself. We can clearly see the business value. There cannot be a better case to apply AI ML than this, because we had talked earlier. We have already invested on all the raw material, the time and money. How do we capture? So whatever you get, it's a really good amount without any further extra cost to you other than the investment on this technology itself.
So do you think that the sort of working at scale was actually an advantage in making this happen? So let me say that a different way. So a lot of times when you think about pushing technology, it's with the little guy that doesn't have as much to lose, right? And he can go and do cool things, but maybe in this case, that's such a nice to have on some of this stuff, right? The technology push in pharma isn't necessarily in these kind of processes. That's not where we think. So the fact that you guys have such scale across so many different kinds of products and all over the world, actually that was to your advantage in being able to push this technology, because you can make this business case, because if this works in this little thing, you already have all these other things that you can go, hey, if this works here, guess what? We can go over here and here and here.
That's exactly right.
Right?
Yeah, so that's what we're doing actually. Yeah, that's how we're doing it. So we started with the one plant here and one product first, and then we experimenting. I say, okay, the same product's being made somewhere else. Just take it and apply it to other ones, right? Then we took up the next product. Let's develop the model for that one. Here is being made. If the same product being made somewhere else, let's apply that as well. So yeah, I think organically you are kind of taking one by one and scaling it at the different sites and places as such.
Okay. So do you see like a significant risk or downside to this kind of process or way of thinking or way of approaching these internal processes?
I really don't. I don't see basically a risk around it. If anything, we are going to be benefiting. As this time we are not using it for any GMP element of that. So it's as a business tool. So definitely there's not a risk. What we are basically trying to do. One thing I'd like to talk about is that even though it sounds easy, there has been some challenges that we're still trying to address that. And I'm happy to share some of those
do it.
challenges.
What are some of the things that have really, I don't know, gotten in your way?
Yeah. So the biggest challenge, as you know, is the data, right?
Yep.
So the images themselves, right? These images are per unit is close to maybe 1 MB to 2 MB. We're talking millions of images, right?
Yep.
Now, the way the production floor works is that these cameras are connected to a shop floor computer, which is the limited capacity storage. So as these cameras are taking the picture, it goes to a computer. Computer determines whether something is defective or not. And the image is basically saved. Now, the computer has its own network, so it is not going to save forever, right? So it's going to override the saved images. And so you're not saving the images forever, right? We all know that we have to have a good amount of images to train the model. Unfortunately, the way the system is set up, that we're not saving the images on all the products and all the machines. Luckily, we had one machine, a product that was saving, and we were able to get that and basically use that to train the model. So now we are going back on all those machines that were installed 10 years ago. We're going to go and retrofit, working with the vendor themselves, that how can we store those images and move them to the cloud so we can have those to develop the model itself. And that in itself is a big, big challenge, because anytime you go and retrofit your GMP process, you bring a new software, new piece of equipment to store the images, then you got to do. So that process is basically slowing us down. Okay. So literally almost every time you go, you have to go and retrofit your machine to start capturing the images so that those images, rejected one, are fed into the model. If you're not saving them, you're not able to send those to the models to work, right? So that's a prerequisite there, right there.
Yeah,
so that's the biggest challenge. Yeah.
You need your own little data center just for one thing. So this just made me think of something. Ultimately, you have to work with vendors on this stuff, right? I would assume to some extent, right? And not like, I'm not talking about the AI vendor. I'm talking about the equipment itself that that's ultimately right. you're messing with. So whether it's a filling line or an inspection line or whatever, I don't know, maybe you can't tell me this. Is this something that ends up being this, super secret Merck thing, or is it something that ends up getting shared with the vendor, which would ultimately lead to this expanding out into the marketplace on a broader scale than even what you guys are doing?
Yeah. So I think this is all the models we developed are, kind of owned by us, right? Yep. So we are not sharing the models themselves. What we are doing is vendor telling us, enable us the storage of the images with this kind of bandwidth that we are basically looking with the speed we want. Okay. Some of the machines are that old that the vendor is saying we can't do it even. So think about the limitations, right? So if you cannot save the images, well, sorry, then this concept of taking and developing the model is basically not going to work, right?
Okay.
So we are limited by certain product. We just cannot do it because even the quality of the images are not that great, right? In order to develop the model. So there's some limitation that we may not be able to touch unless we go and upgrade our machines, right, to the new machines. And that itself is, the company, that's a big good change. That's right. To do
and
that.
A lot of money.
There's a lot of money involved there.
Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. So I knew what I was going to talk to you about, and I still feel like I've been learning a whole bunch here.
Sure.
So something that I know you're pretty passionate about, and I think is really important, is is being able to build a team to do this, right? So you've talked to the willingness of your corporate culture to buy into it because of the business use case and the value to the business. Now, there's a gajillion companies out right now that have a business use case to do stuff and serve their customers at a certain dollar value, and they're all trying to hire the same people and they can't get enough, right? So in this world of AI ML and what you're talking about, it's a little bit more mature in other industries, right? You were, before the call, we were talking about how GE kind of pioneered a lot of this with, maybe other people did too, but on a mega scale, they did with their jet engines, right? And they can, all the GE engines flying across the country right now, they can see exactly what's going on in them and they can model things. That's amazing to me. But in our world, it's fairly non-existent. So how do you build a team up that wants to work in a space where it's not very mature and they don't know what kind of future you're going to have in it and things like that?
No, thank you. That's a really very important question, actually, to do that. One of the things that when I brought in Merck, one of the things that my experience I brought in is what they call data product management concept. So think about anytime you develop a solution, we call it Hawk AVI, this particular tool, the concept of data product. So think about any physical product you make. It's not a product you just start at one time and finish. You have to maintain the life cycle of a product. Same thing here as well is the data product life cycle. So we brought the concept where we were able to basically map out the vision of this, what a good looks like, not today, in 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year plan. So you could clearly see where we are heading to, right? And the reason I'm telling you is that this is, if you are able to tell your team that what the vision looks like and where they are starting, if they can see everything clearly, they're excited and they know they're working on something that is bigger than what they have worked in the past,
and
right?
what it looks like in the moment, right?
That's right. It looks like in the moment that they do that, right? So we brought that concept actually as a data product concept, and you maintain that. So you define here are the features that we want to have. This feature will be released this year, and we'll work on the next one, and basically so on. Now, in order to other element which is really, really important is manage the change. So we all know that developing the AI ML model, and it's not that a big of a deal. We can do that as long as we have a data to develop that. I think the biggest change, our biggest problem is how do we manage the change, right? How do we bring people together so that they can adopt the solution, right? How do they get the buy-in? People, we always have resistance to change. Will they adopt this tool we are developing in the shop floor? How do they feel it, right? So there's a whole element of data culture and education literacy program. I ran something called Data Science Knowledge Network, which is basically a community of people coming together, including the business side of it, and showcase what data can do for a company and how can impact their work. So if someone sees a success of this data, they say, oh, I want to have in my area as well. Yeah, I'm happy to basically do that. So that brought in basically engagement from the actual users in the space, right? So as long as we and users are engaged part of that, they're telling this is what good looks like to us. Please include this in the feature, right? To do that. So once you define your product with the clarity, now you can bring the talent because your requirements are defined. You exactly know what good looks like. Let's bring the right talent to do that, define the roadmap. And we basically follow the agile methodology. So we are engaging the users, going sprint by sprint, developing the new feature, taking the users with them, train them, and basically move on to the next release and so on. So getting the right talent, there's a lot of engagement from the business side, people appreciating the value, understanding what can bring to them. So there's a whole kind of ecosystem of stakeholders that basically came into the play to make this happen successfully.
So you have a team. Your team is certainly more than your team. I'm assuming you have a lot of matrix type people in because of the stakeholders, right? So you have you have those users that you're interacting with for any project. But I'm just curious, what does your team look like? Like, how many people? Is this like a really little small ninja team, or is it a pretty big organization already?
Yeah, so close to, we have around 14 people team.
Okay.
That are engaged into actual work, other than we got a sponsor, right? So business sponsor, as well at the highest level, you can basically get that, right? So we're talking about close to 14 people that will include, data product management side. Then we got data scientists, we got some engineers, we got architects, we got the people who are doing the documentation piece,
Yep.
right, as well. We got some business users, subject matter experts being part of the team. So think about, if we are trying to define a feature, it's not some technical people, data scientists sitting in a room and doing it. I think there's a subject matter experts coming in and being part of the team itself and helping. This is how we want to do that, because that domain knowledge is with them, and they're the one basically helping the team actually to drive where we want to go and what it looks like.
Okay, that's good. Well, hey, I don't want this to go too long. I want to leave this for the chance to be able to do this again sometime. But I did one more quick question, because I don't think we touched on it at the beginning, but and I've found this to be pretty interesting about you. How many use cases do you have so far that you've actually worked on?
Specific to this solution or other areas?
Just in general across, within the pharma space.
So just applying this automated vision system, Hawk AVI, we call it, is basically, we got 21 use cases total. So meaning these are the 21 different uses of the same solution we talked about. And I want to talk about one use case that probably you may not imagine how it's going to impact. Mm-hmm. So think about when we get some defective product. Most likely, some cases might be raw material is defective, right? Now we buy a raw material in a very bulk way, and there are multiple supplier vendors supplying the raw material. Mm-hmm. So if I see a ejection happening due to raw material, what I want as a company, we want to decide, can we replace this vendor? Can we replace the raw material with something different? Because this is a problem. And that raw material little expensive. And but we want to test whether a little expensive product is better in the long run or not. Mm-hmm. What this tool can tell you is that you can run the analysis over the last 1 year and say, here is what raw material caused the problem to us. Here is what the defect was. You set up the baseline and say, okay, let me switch the raw material, which is a little expensive, and let me run for 3 months, right? And let's compare, when we extra investment that we made on the raw material, what was the end, how much did we gain out of that process? This, for the procurement, this tool can give them analysis as to making a certain business decision is proving us whether switching the raw material with a different vendor, a little bit expensive, is that cost effective long term. And we have used this in multiple cases, basically do that. So think about, we're like applying that in a very different context.
You're able to figure out total cost of ownership or whatever for a lot of different things going on there.
That's right. Yep. So the use cases are many of them actually. Upstream process, we are creating the use case. Can they see? Because think about, you are trying to detect something at the very end, right? When the project getting ejected. Is there anything we could do upstream, much in advance, that you don't have to come to the end and eject the material, right? Mm-hmm. What kind of insights can we create? So there are multiple insights we're trying to create for upstream folks to be careful and take care of before it comes to the final stage of the inspection.
So you're starting at the end of the process. You're doing all these things and you can come up with all these use cases to how it could help. And then by doing good analysis, you can work your way up the process to find other critical points that are of departure for where, like, good product, bad product, or that's potential problem areas that you could be watching there in a way that's going to decrease the things further downstream, right?
Yep, 100%. That's exactly what is happening. And one particular use case is, as you know, the bubbles in liquid product, bubbles is a big problem, right? Mm-hmm. So when the camera is taking a picture, camera thinks that bubble is at some kind of defect. Now, it's a chemical properties of liquid. You basically cannot, control it. What we're trying to do is that rather than rejecting that bubble as a defective, we can give the insight what was happening half an hour ago, upstream process that caused the bubbles to come in, right?
Yeah.
So while we have something happening in the inspection side, you take how much time does it take when the actual product is getting filled in? Can we connect with the time wise and say when you're rejecting a lot of bubbles at the end, by the way, half an hour to your process, something was happening. Can you look into that? What caused that, right? So you can connect upstream and downstream together really to get the insight.
Right. So like a minor temperature variation or a different length of agitation or whatever, all those different things could affect the bubbles being in the product when it gets down to this point. And if you could fine tune that, then that will go away as a problem. Right. Yep. And that way it's not even being analyzed as a defect. It's just gone. It's
that's
not
right.
Even
yep.
there.
That's gone. Yep. That's right.
Okay. That's really, or you could just have somebody just with a little pin, just popping them all.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I would do. All right. Well, hey, if we could, just before we close out, is there anything else you'd like to share? You're trying to be present here in this marketplace of ideas, and I think it's awesome. And I'm glad that you're sharing because everybody can learn from you. What's something that you're really excited about right now, looking forward into this space?
Yeah, no, we are really excited. So one of the work that we are doing in applying AI is robotic units. So this, we just talked about, this is in the production side of it, right? So mass production is taking place. Some of the clinical side of it, right? So when you're doing the clinical production, you don't have to have the mass scale, right? You need a limited quantity. Necessarily, you don't have to set up the huge plant for that, right? So machine like production scale machine, you can use robotic units basically to inspect those products. So now we're working on that side, which is really exciting. Applying the robotic units, multiple of them, really go on and use that technology. It'll be interesting to experiment how well the robotic units are doing. Is there anything we can deploy a model, our own model, to enhance or augment the intelligence of a robotic units, same way what we are trying to do, and see if we can basically come up with something better solution. So that's a new area that we're really excited to get into. That we're applying AI in other space as well. So there's so much to do. Frankly speaking, we have much more business problems that we can solve. And we're excited to be really taking some of the forefront of those challenges and basically take it to the next level to do that.
Well, I think you'll never run out of business problems to solve. That's for sure. And let's solve one at a time for now and do a good job. And I think you're gonna have plenty of jobs moving forward if you do a good job with that. So, hey, thanks for being on today. I appreciate it, Vijay. I'm looking forward to putting this out to everybody so they can learn more from you. I'm going to put all your information on this episode. So for anybody listening, if you want to reach out to Vijay, say, hey, he's definitely on LinkedIn. And he's got a couple articles that he's written for a couple different websites over the years. We'll put those in the show notes as well. So thanks for being on today, Vijay. Look forward to maybe meeting you at an event sometime.
Thank you. No problem. I'm happy to connect sometime soon, actually.
All right. Awesome.
All right.
Thanks for being on.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.